So what they were putting up with didn't look as if it was going to be subjected to very much change. It was so hard, it was so unrelenting, there was no hope. This was what life was going to be like. Nothing very much happened. Except there are always exceptions. Now and again there was an event, and that did upset things, and people had to react to events. And the one event which is relevant to this particular topic came in the year 1064. News reached France, and reached Normandy obviously, that there had been a shipwreck. A boat had been cast up on the shore at the mouth of the River Somme in Normandy. And when men went to investigate who was on it, a crew obviously, but the most important, there was a celebrity on it, and his name was Harold, and he was the Earl of Wessex. The Earl of Wessex, a Saxon earl, had been shipwrecked off the coast of Normandy. What on earth were they going to do about that when the Normans heard about it, inevitably, after they got over the shock? They said to themselves, what is he doing in Normandy? What on earth is he up to? The Normans are great chess players. They love planning in advance. They love working out reasons for things. They love working out the background. They like method. They like system. They could not for the life of them work out what on earth Harold had in mind when he came to Normandy. Never crossed their mind that he might have come there by accident. Yeah. There was once an Austrian chancellor called Metternich, and in 1815 he was at a famous congress in Vienna, and everybody was there. And in the middle of the night, his servants woke him up to tell him that the Russian ambassador had just suddenly died. And Metternich propped himself on an elbow and said to himself, I wonder what he means by that. The Normans were great ones for wondering what anybody meant by anything. What did Harold mean? What was he up to? What was his real game? And Harold, of course, being Harold, didn't care what they were thinking. If they wanted to think he was up to something, then he was up to something. His job was to get home. He was the second man in the kingdom. He was running the place. He had to get back as soon as possible. If the Normans wanted to tie themselves in knots, well, that was their business, and he let them get on with it. Harold did get home. That's another story later on. We'll come to that. And everything went quiet until January 1066. And then, my word, things didn't half start to happen. Firstly, Edward the Confessor died on January the 5th, I think it was. On January the 6th, Harold got himself crowned. You think Queen Elizabeth II was crowned in June of 1953, but in fact she became queen in February 1952. It took 16 months to crown Elizabeth. It took Harold 24 hours because he had to move fast. He had to get himself on the throne with the crown on his head, anointed by holy oil, approved of by the church, and all the rest of it, so that he was the rightful, legal, honourable Christian king. And it took him 24 hours, so it didn't hang about. And then what a year. And 1066 saw not one king but three on the English throne. There were two coronations. There was Halley's Comet. Ever heard of Halley's Comet? Well, it appeared in 1066 in the sky, and it's in the tapestry. There is a picture of this star in the heavens and people pointing to it and wondering, another thing, what on earth is that? What does that mean? What on earth is going on there? And of course, because it was a celestial happening, the world was not short, and England was not short of people to wag their finger in the air and say, hey, mark my words, no good will come of it. So it set off all sorts of superstitious reactions among the English. There was not one invasion of England, there were two. While before that happened, Harold had to build an army where most of his troops were away farming. William had to build an army. This is where he brought in all those soldiers of fortune from all over the place. He also had to build a navy. How could he get his soldiers across the channel to say nothing of thousands of horses. Without building, he had to build a fleet first, not just the odd ship. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of ships. We're talking about thousands of horses. You think of the feat of organisation that's required. Not just collecting the personnel, but building the damn thing, felling trees, all the saws required, all the adzes, all the nails, everything, all had to be done in 1 year. Then, of course, it's one thing to get all that ready, but then he needs an army. And as I said, he can't send out call-up papers. He has to persuade enough of his vassals, enough of his barons, to commit themselves to something which could lose them everything: life, property, family, the lot. He had to be very, very persuasive indeed. And there was not one battle in 1066, there were 3. And Harold very nearly won 2 of them. The first one is in the north, called Fulford, when the King of Norway arrived and won a battle. The second battle was at Stamford Bridge, where Harold marched 200 miles in the space of a fortnight, caught the Vikings unprepared and annihilated them. Then came news that William had landed, so he had to march 200 miles all the way back again, and took on William at Hastings, and he very nearly won. It was touch and go, right until the end of the afternoon. Now you just think, if Harold had pulled that off, if Harold had marched nearly 200 miles, defeated the greatest Viking alive, annihilated his army, marched 200 miles back again, defeated William, annihilated the Normans, his reputation would have rung down the centuries. He would have been up there with Marlborough and the Duke of Wellington, possibly even higher. And he came so close.